Add and subtract fractions today. I want you to stop the video and I actually want you to go and do some Huda math, the integers addition and integers subtraction, just to do a quick reminder of how to do negative numbers, adding and subtracting. Come back to the video when you are complete. All right, so let's do a review. Putting numbers on a number line. So draw yourself a number line from the whole number 2 to the whole number 4. Stop the video and place these 5 letters or numbers at their given positions on the number line. Okay, welcome back. Let's take a look. Well, first I have to figure out what the number line is cut into. It's cut into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this is third, so I'm going to change all of my fractions to 6. So 3 times 2, so this would be at 4, 6. So I'm at 3 and 4, 6. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's where I'd put letter A. If you put 3 and 2/3, that's fine there too. 3 1/3, 6 times 2 times 2, so 3 and 2, 6. 1, 2, 1, 2 would be here, so there's letter B. C's at 3 1/2, which is 3, 6, so that would be here, letter C. 2 and 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there'd be letter D. The square root of 6 now is a little tricky because it won't be exactly where we want it to. It's at 2.4 repeating. Well, that's 2 and 0.4, or that's 2 and 4/10, and we're on a 6th number line. So how do we place that? We need to think it's at 4/10. Well, this would be 2 and this would be your half. So 2 1/2 would be here. So it'd be less than 2 1/2. Now, this would be 2/6. 2/6 is 3 repeating, so it's going to be more than 0.3 repeating, but less than 0.5, so it's going to be somewhere in here. They'll just estimate, and that's how you put letter E on. So just know, some you can put in exact locations, some like the square root of 6 you're estimating. Okay, here's a quick review. Write these 6 problems down, or just do them in your head right now. Can you answer these? -5 and a -6 both have the same sign, so it's a -11. I add. -5 and a +10, different signs, so I subtract and I keep the sign of the higher number, so I have a +5. 4 plus 9 is just 13. -6 and a +3. Different signs, so I would subtract and I get 3, and the sign on the higher number is 6, so it's a -3. Here I have a -3 and a -4. Signs are the same, so I add and I keep the negative sign. Remember, when we have 2 negatives in a row, that turns to a positive. So really this is just 6 plus 5, which is 11. All right, so here we finally are to our lesson. We are going to, right now, I want you to write add and subtract, and then these 4 steps. We need to find our common denominator. We need to make equal fractions. We add the numerator, we just keep the denominator, and then we simplify. So hopefully most of this is a review. Now you can go side by side, or you can write it up and down. It doesn't matter. I'll show you both ways. I like to do it up and down only because then I can find equivalent fractions. Using our least common multiple, if we multiply these out, that'd be 24. I could have went all the way to 48. It just causes me to more simplify. 4 times 6 is 24, so 1 times 4 is 4. 8 times 3 is 24, so 3 times 5 is 15, which would give me 19/24. That cannot be simplified. Again, you could have just done it on the sides like this. You just have to make sure when you do this, you don't accidentally add either of those numbers in the middle and you get the same answer. So either way works perfect. In this case, we already have a common denominator. So now we look at the numerators. I have a -2 and a +4. So in this case, I'm actually subtracting the numerators to get 2. 4 is larger, so it's positive, so the answer is just 2/3. All right, I want you to go ahead and try these two. Stop the video now and come back when you're done. All right, common denominator here. First one I can think of is 40. Let's just multiply them together. So times 8 is 72. Times 5 is 25. And now I'm subtracting. So 72 minus 25. This is the reason I like to write them over each other, but you don't have to. And you get 47 40ths, which would be 1 and 7 40ths. And yes, you need to turn it to a mixed number. Okay, so let's look at this one. I am going to write this one up and down. It doesn't matter. Just so you have both ways, it's 15 times 3 times 3 times 5 is 10. So now I have a negative 10 and a minus 3 or a negative 3. So the denominator stays the same. And then I think about this. This is a negative 10, and yes, this was a minus sign, but that makes it a negative 3. Signs are the same, so I add and I get a negative 13/15. What do we do now with mixed numbers? So if I was adding these two mixed numbers, there's two ways. I could just add the parts and say that's 4, and then add the tops, since I already have a common denominator, and say I have 4 and 4/5. Easy most of the time. However, this way works all of the time. We turn them to improper. 1 times 5 plus 1 is 6/5. We add 3 times 5 is 15, 16, 17, 18/5. Because when they look like this, when you have negatives in there, it might be easier to see. In this case, we have 24/5, which would go in there 4 and 4/5. Right now, this one seems like more work, but it actually works with all of your negative numbers too. So what I'd like you to get used to is changing when you get a mixed number, change it to improper. If you do that, it not only works for adding and subtracting, and it's easier with negative numbers, but it also works for multiplying and dividing every time. So I'm going to do the first one with you, and then I'm going to have you stop and do the second one by yourself. Because they have common denominators, we don't need to, but I'm just going to get to that habit of doing that. So I have 15, 16, 17, 18/5, and this is negative, and we are adding 20, 22/5. So now you can see a negative 18 and a positive 22. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, which would give me 4 because I have to subtract them because they're different signs, and I keep the larger signs. So my answer is 4/5. That makes it easier than trying to figure out, well, it's 3 minus 4, but then I'm adding and I get 5/5, so it just is more confusing. So always change to improper. Go ahead and stop the video now and do this next one. All right, so let's take a look. 1 times 8 is 8 plus 1 is 9/8. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5/2. And whoops, I forgot my negative. Common denominator would be 8. Times by 4 times 4 is 20. So now I can see my denominator is 8. I have a negative 9. And yes, I'm adding. This is a positive 20. So I would subtract, which 20 minus 9 is 11. And I must keep the sign of the higher sign, which is the positive. So now let's turn this back. 8 goes into 11 once with 3/8 left over. Last one. Stop the video, give it a try, come back when you're done. All right, 5 times 20 is 100 plus 1 is 101/20. Minus, that's a negative. 3 times 4 is 12, 13, 14, 15 fourths. So this one's done. I got to get this one to 20. So times 5, 15 times 5 is 25 is 75. So this is why I like to write them up and down because I get confused otherwise. So now I have my denominator's 20, but I have a negative 101 over a negative or minus 75. So that would give me 600, a negative 176. So if I put how many 20s can go into 176 can go in 8 times, which would give me 160, which gives me a leftovers of 16 20ths. Do not forget to bring the negative with. So now that can be simplified to a negative 8. 4 can go into both of those. 4/5. So the answer is a negative 8 4/5. All right. Picture the fractions 1/2 and 47/94 in your mind. These are actually equal. It's much easier to understand a fraction when it's written in simple form. Likewise, a fraction 4 2/5 is much easier to picture than an improper fraction. So, two things. Simplest form, and when you're done, always change it back into the mixed number. Go ahead and get started.